I recently did the horror video of nasty systems for Halloween, and my kids were like, ooh, a Halloween video that Dad did, we should watch it. They never watch my videos. I thought I could get away with this. They watch the video and they get, Dad, if you're complaining about computers that look like that, why do ours look like this? Yeah, I was called out by, what, a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old. So 24 years worth of life experience. I'm nearly double their age and they're gonna call me out. Well, they were right. Today we're gonna talk about maintenance you should be doing on your computer right now. Ow.
Hey, Jay. Jay. Jay.
What?
We got work to do.
Yeah, I'm playing World of Warships. Yeah. World of Warships is the free-to-play naval strategy game where you command the most iconic and famous warships from World War I and World War II, recreated with stunning detail and accuracy. Build your fleet while participating in various game types while upgrading your ship's arsenal along the way. New players who sign up using my link below will receive an exclusive starter pack to get you up and running quickly by receiving 7 days premium time, 1 million credits, 300 doubloons, and the Tier 5 premium ship, the Exeter.
So what are you guys waiting for? Start sinking ships with World of Warships by heading to the description below and getting your freebies. Okay, so this PC right here belongs to my youngest, my 9-year-old. This is a pretty overkill system, even for the time that it was built. She built this one. This is a 11900K. It's got an AIO, as you can see. It's got a EVGA for the win 3080. Oh, I thought it was a TI, it's not. So it's a little less ridiculous for a 9-year-old, but still, it's a for the win EVGA card, which makes it even that much more nostalgic. The front filter is like almost completely closed off. Nah, not too bad, but still. All of that made it in with the filters. So I'm wondering if we have some negative pressure somewhere maybe now at this point. This system over here, very similar spec, only it's a 3080 water cooled. This actually used to be Phil's card. When we upgraded him to a 40 series, this card ended up going in here. So it's a 3080 water cooled, 011 dynamic, not too bad on the exhaust side in terms of, so we have dogs. We have a husky, a Siberian husky, and then we have a terrier mix. They have a front bonus room in our house that's been converted to their computer room. They love to shut the door because we yell at them, shut the door, because they're loud as hell when they're gaming and on FaceTime with their friends and stuff. It's also where the dogs hang out a lot. It's the one room I also haven't put a HEPA filter in. I'm thinking after I clean the computers and then clean the room, we should probably put a filter in that room to stop it from looking like this. I mean, when it gets stuck, like that's dog dander right there. Also too, I know I sniffle a lot. I've talked about this before. It's kind of my long COVID. My nose is very active. That is not dust, that is dog dander. I'm allergic to my Siberian. I am gonna probably be very hating life by the end of this video. It's also an important reason to clean this stuff because the PC fans are also aerating the dander in the room. So when we talk about PC maintenance, cleanliness is only part of it. There are some things that have lifespan in the systems. That is going to be things like thermal paste. That is also going to be things like the dirt and dust that can accumulate in all the nooks and crannies of our system. Now this system here has a bigger problem. I don't know if you can see it on camera very well. That is that green drip right there. I have had these tubes, I think it's this one right here. I have had these tubes pop off before. I had her basically call me, like nonchalantly call me, hey Dad. Hey, she's calling me from downstairs. So I heard a little pop and then like all the fluid in my system is just like running all over the table. I'm like, well, did you turn it off? She's like, no. I'm like, turn it off, turn it off. So I fixed this a long time ago, but something about these particular tubes and these Alpha Cool fittings like to back off. I don't understand why. There's not a lot of temperature change happening, which can cause that, but I think these just fit loosely in those fittings. It's not something I'm prepared to deal with today because I'm not set up yet to be able to drain the system and refill it. But I do think I'm gonna change these fittings out to the Corsair type because these fittings right here, the Alpha Cool, where they've got the little brass clamp and there's like a black plastic O-ring and then a brass clamp and then an O-ring and then that clamps down, and as you tighten it, the O-ring closes. It's almost like a piston ring. It closes to kind of bite. For whatever reason, I think the tolerance between the fittings, and even though these are also 13-inch tubes, think there's some difference in tolerance between the two.
13 inch?
Or 13 millimeter. The 13 millimeter tube. So I feel like it's not clamping down as tight. So I kind of want to upgrade her to the frosted PMMA tubing because this is PETG. So we'll get her on the frosted acrylic with the new fittings. Maybe even white fittings would look good in here. Ew, the fans are completely brown on the backside. This is the type of cleaning that really, I should be taking the fans out to do this, but oh, my nose is already feeling like it's burning. I can see the dander floating around. I should totally be wearing a mask, but I don't have any here. Also too, looking at the fluid, it doesn't look grimy, doesn't look like it's changing. And this is why dust accumulation is something that's important to fix. Look at the bottom PCIe slot. Now it may be low, but dust does have conductivity. So if you start building up conductivity inside the slots like that, you can start getting random crashes and errors and whatnot because of pins being bridged that shouldn't be bridged. But another thing that I'm noticing is her blocks are starting to turn a little brown on the inside. So I would like to see if that's discoloration of the nickel plating, which tends to happen with glycol over time because it can start to erode some of the nickel plating. So what happens is the copper starts to show through, so it looks real brown. But I don't like the discoloration I'm seeing in there, as well as inside the CPU block. I'm also noticing cracks on this acrylic right here. So you can see the cracks that are in there. Now, I can't feel them with my fingernail. Unfortunately, it tends to be something that happens with acrylic over time. Haven't really figured out why. Some would like to say it's because the fittings are over tightened and then over time that tension builds up and spider cracks out. Okay, so we've got some nastiness to deal with. Now in a water cooled system right here, these parts have been running for 4 years. This is at least 4-year-old fluid. Typically, I try not to go more than 2. I'll be honest, I have neglected my kids' system, both of my kids' system quite a bit. So we are going to start by just doing some basic cleaning. I'm gonna save this one for second. Now, I'm not gonna be air blowing this out all over the place, especially in our new shop. Believe it or not, I have actually hooked up, and I'm gonna be doing a different setup. This one's just temporary. I'm gonna have actually a built-in vacuum system in the wall that is a reel, so I can pull it out. But I actually have a nice, quiet, high-pressure vacuum system. Look at that. It's like Jay listened to you guys instead of blowing it all over the place. Now here's the thing. Let's talk about the bristles real quick. If those aren't anti-static bristles, you're just gonna explode your system with static electricity. That would be potentially true if we didn't already test shocking our systems while it was on and running and didn't come across any problems. Oh, ah! Oh, dang. So I'm not too concerned right now. Also too, if you're concerned about that, then get yourself special anti-static bristles and whatnot. But I tend to do it just the easy way, okay? I've never had a problem this way, and hopefully I don't have one. I also like to get these detail brushes. They're inexpensive from Amazon to allow me to like get into the cracks and stuff like this, because what I have to do is I have to break up all of the dirt that is just sort of stuck to the edges of the fan blades and stuff. Because when you're dealing with like dog dander, it's not just like normal dust, it's actually got a little bit of like a humidity factor to it. So then what happens is it starts to stick to stuff more than if it were just dirt. Also too, directly above me, I have the intake for our AC system. So I'm actually watching the dust that's coming up right now get flown up into the intake there, which means I would have to prematurely change that filter out or clean that filter. I'm okay with that. That's what I paid for. So I guess let's just go ahead.
Oh my God.
It's pretty bad, I know.
You should be using a vacuum, I guess.
Well, I was trying to loosen it up first, but you know what? I'll vacuum the air. Hold on.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, I forgot to turn it on. All right, so this is clearly a lot better than it was. So I brought out my CompuCleaner.com, which doesn't exist anymore, blower. I put it on low and was trying to like blow through the radiator, actually blow reverse, because you don't want to push the dust further in, so you want to make it go reverse the way it was. So if the flow is that way, you want to push the dust that way. But it overpowered the vacuum, so some of it got into the room, but I was able to like vacuum the air. So Phil had actually, he mentioned how this was like a vent hood, kinda, which made me think like, I wonder if I could come up with, I just got a splinter. Makes me wonder if I can come up with similar to like my paint booth idea, if I can build like a shroud. Think of like a big paint booth for like a car, and And the whole point is like I'm cleaning and dusting and stuff, it's just gonna suck it into a big filter. So I could do that with a big box fan actually in a filter. That's the next step, I think, of the cleaning that will make it better with any of that dust flying around. But I'll tell you what though, this is certainly better than the before. You used to go everywhere and you guys were like so triggered by it. But as you can see, the filters came nice and clean. GPU actually turned out really good. If you look in there and see the fins and stuff, it actually turned out really, really good. This is one of those times with it not being vertical probably helped because not much of the dust is coming this way and getting sucked up into the GPU. Most of the dust came across the backside of it because the bottom fan, almost all that air goes into the lower area, which is kind of a waste. Some of it will come up through there. The two top fans are above the GPU, which are blowing dust across the backside. So that's why the fins and fans actually weren't too bad. My nose. All I smell right now is my dog, and it sucks because I love my dog, but I'm allergic to my dog. So anyway, what I'm gonna do now is repaste the GPU, or not the GPU, but the CPU. I think it's fine. Haven't noticed any weird temperature issues with her computer, but it's been long enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and now put some KPX on there. I have no idea what thermal paste we used in the past. It is KPX Extreme. So looks a little bit moaty around the outside and kind of dryish in the middle. So I don't think it's a bad idea to go ahead and repaste it. We found that KPX performs very well for us, but it is not immune to pump out. It's not. In fact, because it stays so liquidy, it could potentially pump out. And I feel like the repasting like this is something that, because look, there's not even much that made it on here, right? But I feel like repasting is something that is kind of an annual thing that should be done depending on the component that it's in. So this is why the graphene pads and stuff have become so popular, because they don't pump out, they don't dry out. The Kingpin doesn't dry out, but depending on the mounting pressure and how hot the CPU gets and stuff, it could absolutely pump out. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw the 3080 back in here. I was debating on changing her card out to something else. I'm not gonna do that. Unfortunately, this card though is subject to sagging. So I was trying to figure out like, why did I have 3 of these in there? And I remembered, oh yeah, it was part of my anti-sag device that I had made, because plenty of videos showing how I did this and why I did this and the fact that it works. But that will fix the anti-sag because it's not tied in. Like this bracket, you can see it's just loose. It's not tied into the cooler. That's where sag comes from. But you know what, I'll let her continue to use this card. It's nice to have an EVGA card that is just full-time still being used. The only thing I have left to do with this PC is gonna be to clean the glass on the front and then put it back together. Do a boot test because I did pull out the cooler. That way I can make sure it's all still running. I didn't somehow yank it and yank a wire off where now it's not running or a fan's not working. But basic maintenance on a system like this is pretty much this simple. Just blow out the dust where possible, especially how I was showing you in that bottom PCIe slot. Dust accumulation can cause conductivity. Dust is conductive. It takes a lot of it to be conductive, but as you can see, I feel like I have a fairly clean home. I have a whole home filter. But as you can see, animals can overpower that filter, and so can kids. Oh, I should have said so can dogs, because my kids pretty much are like animals at this point. This is true if you have cats as well. You'd be surprised how much cat hair and stuff can get in things. I've seen people even have bird feathers that have birds, like when they're molting, make their way into their PCs. So this one's pretty much done. I know this might seem like a duh kind of factor, but I think a lot of people really do adopt a set and forget when it comes to their computer. Let me put it this way. If you're the kind of person that doesn't do your seasonal air filter changes in your home AC, if you have central air, I know you're not doing this. So all that stuff that's no longer being caught by your AC filter that's just blowing by is going in here. So I highly recommend that you go through this. I'm gonna do the same process with my older kid's PC. Oops. Only I have to be a little bit more careful. I can't just go flopping around with a brush and the vacuum because I don't want to knock any of those tubes off. So it's gonna be a little bit more involved in terms of being careful. But I do think that that system is ready for a full water cooling overhaul when it comes to paste, and ideally, because it's still running the EK block, It'd be nice to get that out of there. So we're getting a little nature assist here. It's a pretty windy day, so the second I walked out here with it, like the wind alone was making it fly everywhere. I know I did a whole short saying not to do this with your fans. I don't know if you noticed, I'm not letting the fans free spin. I'm just letting them turn a little bit. But this is a heavy duty dirty. Like it needed something more. So we had to come out here and do it with the compressed air, which is only set to like 40 PSI right now. So it's not crazy. But it needed something more than just the blower could handle, and we're outside, so that dust is going away.
Back to nature.
Back to you dogs. So really, I just need to give these lower fans a little bit of coaxing to let go of some of the sticky dander that's down there. So now I'm gonna give it one more vacuum pass. We'll clean up that spot, power it on so that I can get the top off, because right now air has made it to other places in the system. But this one came clean pretty nicely. So you can see the radiator and the fans and everything are like perfectly clean now. But it took more oomph. Although it was only 40 PSI. Again, do not crank it to like 150 PSI and go with the fans, because this will happen. Now the last thing I'm gonna do after I top this off, like I said, is I'm gonna clean up with a damp rag in there, clean the glass and stuff, but she's had this kind of a waterfall effect going for a while. There's technically nothing wrong with that. You could leave it that way if you like it kind of looking like a waterfall aquarium kind of a thing, because none of that air is getting picked up into the pump. So that's actually fine. It's actually a bad design on the EK distribution plate there, because that should be entering lower so that air can make its way up there. So you can see it's right at the top where it's returning. So ideally you'd want the return to be lower than the fill port. That way you can get it above the return. But this is still technically perfectly fine, because none of that, Dan, you clean that off. None of that air is making it in there. This is where squeeze bottles really come in handy. As you can see, I tilted the system and let it ran for a bit to let some of the air get out so that the fill port is near the top. As soon as I open that though, it could want to rush up, because if there's a vacuum at all right now, which can happen, especially if there's air in the system. So nope, we're good. We might get a little drip down there, and this is just distilled water, which I can add to this glycol mix without any issues whatsoever. This is when you'll see what I mean, like I cannot get this to ever be fully filled. That's about as far as I can go right there. Maybe a tiny bit farther. Ooh, I do see some tiny spider cracks around this fitting too. Yeah, this is, now you all know how I feel about EK. This has nothing to do with EK, it just has to do with the physics of acrylic. I have had quite a few acrylic pieces do this to me, but I've never had them leak because of it. But it is not exactly confidence inspiring to see spider cracks in your acrylic. So I would highly recommend replacing parts that have acrylic fractures in them. Those really are fractures, and they're in like the inner layers of it. It's weird. That's much better. That's about as good as I could ever get this one. And that's fine, I guess. That could also be an old drip from when I fixed her last leak too. So I'm actually pretty pleased with how clean this one became, to be honest. I know this might seem like a bunch of duh, but I think this is something people tend to forget about. It can impact your system in many ways. The extreme impact would be, like I said, if enough dust accumulated to cause a short somewhere. And if you have a really bad, dirty system, you're dealing with instability or weirdness, it could literally be some bridge shit somewhere with dust, okay? I would start there if it's really bad. I would say that this is probably like a 6 or a 7 on the dirty scale. I think a 9 or a 10 would be like the stuff I showed you in the scary Halloween video. But just the right amount of dust in the wrong spot can cause problems. That's the simplest place to start. Thermal paste is another one. I think people forget thermal paste does have a shelf life or a work life in the system. Especially if it dries out and cracks or creates like a dry lake bed sort of an effect, then you'll get all kinds of pathways in there that are not conducting any sort of heat. So I think we're in the last days of thermal paste though. I think graphene and advancements in graphene are gonna be the future, but there's still drawbacks to graphene. It's extremely fragile, but it's clean. It doesn't degrade. It doesn't phase change. Well, some of them do. We won't talk about that today. But they're just clean and better all around. It's kind of like thermal pads for your CPU and your GPU, but they're extremely thin and very good conductivity. But as you can see, this system Kind of looks like the day it was built again. I thought about upgrading her GPU today, but you know what? I'm gonna have to ask her more than twice, sometimes 3 times to take out the trash and do the dishes. You know how many people right now are probably like, Jay, I'll just take out your trash and do your dishes for a graphics card. She's a good teenager, all right? She's a 15-year-old, she's going on 22. She's very mature for her age, but she's still a teenager and doesn't wanna do the mundane work. Which means I don't wanna do the work of upgrading the GPU. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I know this was just a very basic type of video, but I think there's some very basic ways of thinking out there that people are still neglecting. If you love your PC and you spent thousands on it, which is very possible, why would you let it get this way? Speaking to myself mostly. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hate to imagine what Skunkworks looks like right now.